Hello everyone, my name is Amanda and I'm from the Tamworth Library, and I would like to welcome you to our virtual Q&A session with author Nicola Moriarty. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we meet today on the traditional lands of the Gamilaroi people. I recognise their continuing connection to this land and pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal people present here today. So welcome, Nicola. Nicola lives in Sydney's northwest with her husband and two small but remarkably strong-willed daughters. She's the younger sister of best-selling authors Liane Moriarty and Jaclyn Moriarty. In between various career changes, becoming a mum and studying at Macquarie University, she began to write. Now she can't seem to stop. Her previous works include Free Falling, Paper Chains, The Fifth Letter, Those Other Women, and The X. If you have any questions for Nicola, please write them in the chat box, and at the end of the Q&A session, Nicola will have the opportunity to answer those questions. So welcome, Nicola, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
So we'll start off with your first question. So we're here to talk about your sixth novel, You Need to Know. So without giving away any spoilers, could you please tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So this book opens on Christmas Eve with a car accident on the side of the freeway. And there is quite early on the realization that the car accident involves several members of the same extended family who were driving in convoy to go away for Christmas together. And then works back in time to a month before the car accident to meet the family and get to know them all, find out what's been going on in their lives and what might have caused this terrible car accident. And then later to find out who has and hasn't survived the car accident.
Okay, and what inspired you to write this book?
I think part of it was I did actually stop myself at a car accident a couple of years ago on my way to playing soccer. And I do remember this strange feeling of seeing a car on the other side of the road. And my first thought was, that's a really odd place for this person to be parked. And then looking again and realizing that they weren't parked, that they'd crashed into a tree and nobody else had stopped at the time. So I went around the roundabout and came back and pulled over to help what turned out to be this young P-plater girl who'd lost control of her car. And I think maybe that might have been in the back of my mind later on when I was thinking about my next book. And I started imagining what it would be like if you did come across a car accident and realized that you knew the person involved, or in this case, knew many people involved with many cars, and how shocking it would be to sort of arrive at a scene like that and suddenly look around and realize your whole family is involved in something, and you know what you would do, how you would decide who to go to, you know, how you would cope basically. And at the same time as well, when I started thinking about the idea for this book, I didn't know yet who, I didn't know yet how the car accident was going to happen or anything like that. But my kids have a book called Who Sank the Boat by Pamela Allen. And so the opening of the book, I've got a quote from that book in there. And lines from that book kept running through my head when I was thinking about this book. I would lie awake at night trying to decide who caused the accident, and in my head I'd be thinking, who sank the boat, who caused the accident? And it became like this little sort of mantra while I was trying to piece this book together. So, which is why I thought it was important to ask Pamela Allen's permission to put the quote in the front of the book, because it felt like it became a big part of it.
Great. So who was your favorite character and why?
I'm choosing between Mimi or Darren. I was going to say Mimi on the one hand is I probably relate to a bit more, but actually I think I'll say Darren because he's one of, so in the book there are three brothers, so this family that are involved in this accident. There is grandmother of the family, her three adult sons, three brothers, two wives, and the third brother is single, and then children of the couples. So those are the characters within the book, and one of the brothers, Darren, I think ended up being my most favorite character, favorite to write, and favorite person in the book in the end, because I don't know, he just was fun to write, and I wanted him to, he's the single one. I wanted him to find what he was looking for, and also he's a writer, and he's struggling a bit with his latest book, and I know that feeling.
Yeah. Because I just kept thinking the whole way through, oh, Darren must have killed like 11 Chinamen to go through what he'd gone through. Like everything just happened to him from, well, I won't spoil it, but yes, people need to read to see why you think Darren might have been killed by 11 Chinamen. So which character was your hardest to write and why?
Sure, I'd say that's a tough choice, because they all have their challenges throughout, as far as it takes a while, especially because I always start with the main idea of the story and I build the characters around that, and so it always takes a while to sort of, for them to start speaking to me, and for me to get to know them and figure out who they are. But maybe Jill's the matriarch of the family, the grandmother. So because so she's older than me, so I've got to kind of put myself in different shoes, and she's gone through a lot. She's lost a husband. She's got these 3 grown-up sons. She's got some secrets that she's hiding from the past. So yeah, I guess that was quite challenging, trying to make sure I captured her voice correctly. And I think that would be most challenging.
So what was the most challenging part of writing the book?
Probably some of the research, which I can't say exactly what the research was, because that would be a spoiler for the book, but there is some much darker topics that come up towards the end of the book, which I had to make sure I researched it properly in order to do it justice, but that research was quite confronting to do, and so that was definitely very challenging. But yeah, I can't being cryptic, because if I explain it too much, then I'll give things away.
So that brings me to my next question. The book does deal with quite a few delicate and controversial issues. What do you hope readers will take away when they read this?
I guess I hope that maybe I open people's eyes to some different issues and things like that. Generally speaking, when I read a book myself, the main reason I read is for the enjoyment of it. And I want to be, even if there are darker things throughout it, I still want to be left feeling good. So my aim is to always write the same kind of book as I like to read. So I'm hoping that people will walk away from it still feeling good, despite those bits that might make you feel a bit uncomfortable. So I want people to feel comforted and happy at the end of it, and satisfied. But there is also a lot, I can say without spoilers, there's a lot about motherhood throughout the book, and about the struggles of being a mother. So that's something that I want to I'm hoping people might take something from, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, you are the younger sister of authors Liane and Jaclyn. Did this inspire you to create the 3 male characters who also happen to be siblings as well as published authors?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of, at first, my thinking was that I would make one of the characters a writer, because I just thought, oh, I think it might be nice to put a writer in here, because it's fun to write what and to be able to write about something where you've got all the background knowledge there. And then it suddenly occurred to me, actually, this might be a bit of fun to make all 3 brothers writers, and it could be a bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke about the fact that my sisters and I are writers. And I also thought then there would be the opportunity to use lots of our own real life stories in there and have these parallels between Liane, Jaclyn, and I. But once I kind of started writing these three brothers, they very quickly became completely different from the three of us, and took on a life of their own. And it ended up being that, yeah, they were so far removed from the three of us that I couldn't get in that much stuff, that much real life stuff from the three of us. So it was still a bit of fun though to put that in there.
So as sisters and writers, is there competition, or do you each support each other and read each other's books? Or
We're very supportive of one another. Definitely, the only competition that comes up between the three of us is fighting over family stories and family anecdotes that we want to use within our own books, or if another one of our sisters, when we all get together, tells us a really funny, interesting story of something that happened in their life, we'll fight over, hang on a sec, I want to use that story in my next book. So that's where there's some competition, but the rest of the time, they're both very supportive of me and of each other. They were wonderful actually when this book was at its, I think it was second draft or third draft, I can't remember. I had a sudden panic with some of the edits and sent it to them and said, is there any chance you guys could read this really fast? I've got to, return these edits within the next however many days it was. I gave them hardly any notice, and they both jumped on it straight away, read it really fast for me and answered my questions. And it was mainly just I needed them to reassure me that I was making the right choice with some of the edits. And so it was just lovely to have these two experienced writers right there in my family who were able to just reassure me and say, yep, sure, that edit sounds great, you're making the right choice, or here's a suggestion or something like that. So it's lovely having them as part of my family. I feel very lucky.
yeah, I bet. So one of the things that I noted in your book is that a majority of the story is told from the perspective of female characters. So why did you choose then to give Darren the stronger presence in the book instead of Tony or Pete?
Yeah, that's actually, why did I choose Darren? I think it made sense for me to sort of have, because you had the matriarch, the three brothers, and two of them with their wives. And so generally speaking, I'll often go for the female voice as far as, so I've got the grandmother's voice, Jill, I've got Mimi and Andrea, the two partners of two of the brothers. But then I like the idea of having a male voice, and it made sense then, if I've already got a voice representing one couple and a voice representing this couple over here, Darren being single, I guess it made sense for me to give him his own voice in the book. And I suppose, I could have maybe, looked at, give Pete or Tony a voice as well on top of that. But then I guess you start to get too many characters and too many voices, and it makes it for a more confusing read, that as well. And maybe Darren just kind of jumped out at me as well as the voice that needed to be heard.
Yeah, I think Darren was one of my favourite characters
Yeah.
as well. So on your website, you mentioned that your writing was once referred to as inept by the Melbourne Age. Darren, who has recently published his first book, is also struggling to write his second novel due to a negative book review. Did your experience with the Age influence your decision to write this into your book?
I think it did, yes. I think that was definitely an inspiration for him having that issue, because I do remember feeling when I was writing my second book, like the words from that review kept jumping into my mind. And in my case, it ended up being okay. And I kind of used that as a bit of a something to propel me along when I was thinking about that tough review. I'd think, right, I want to write something good. I want to improve. I want to get better. I want my second book to sort of show that I'm growing as a writer and that I can do this and that I do deserve to be here writing. So I think with Darren, I thought I'll use this slightly in another way, where those words just kept weighing him down. So for him, it didn't propel him forward. For him, the words from this bad review just really were crushing him. And each day he'd go and try to write and just be, stuck with the blank screen in front of him. And I do know that feeling as well, of having a blank screen in front of you in other books since then that I've written. There's definitely been times where I've just thought, I just don't know where to start, and you have to really push yourself to get writing again. So yeah, it was a bit of wanting to share that story of what it was like, and also the fact that I've learned it's okay to get negative reviews, and it's not the end of the world. And I've definitely gotten, a thicker skin since then. So, so I think by the end, Darren was starting to learn to have a thicker skin too.
Which brings me to my next question. So Darren's way of dealing with the negative review was procrastination.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with negative reviews? Do you now stop reading them, or do you use them to propel you along?
So I definitely try not to read reviews as much as I used to. I try to sort of, if I go onto Goodreads, especially when I've got a new book out, so I want to check how it's going. I'll kind of look at what reviews there are there, and then if I see that there are some bad reviews, I'll not click on those ones. I'll click on the nice reviews to give myself a bit of a confidence boost. But the knowledge that that there are bad reviews out there is okay, because I know that not everybody can possibly love the same book. And that's fine, because everyone's different, and it would be very boring if every single person loved the same book and there were no bad reviews. Then it would make for a very boring world. So yes, I kind of avoid reading them too much, but knowing that they are there is okay now.
Yeah, sometimes as a reader, I don't mind the controversial bad reviews, because it makes me want to read the book just as much as the good reviews, to see why they've given those reviews. And often or not, I've actually found some really good stories from bad reviews that I've really liked. So I
That's
suppose, yes.
Yeah, because that would probably be my only concern now when there is a bad review. The only thing, if I'm disappointed, is if I see comments from people going, "Oh, good, I won't bother," and I'll think, "Oh, but but what if you did like it?" So so it's nice to hear that some people look at bad reviews as a reason to actually read something and decide for yourself, because that's the only thing I'd ever ask of people, is to decide for yourself. Yeah,
that's right. So I also listened to an interview that you gave for You Need to Know with Booktopia. And you did mention earlier too that research wasn't your strongest point in the writing process. Could you please tell us about your writing process? Do you have a certain ritual or space or time you prefer to write?
So I prefer definitely to just start with the main story and not get too weighed down with the research first. And that comes later for me to then go back and fact check. Because I feel like if I just researched first, that would be probably a procrastination technique for me. And I would never get started on the actual writing. I'd probably spend forever just researching and researching. So instead, I prefer to just focus on story, on that main plot, start writing, and then come back and research later to make sure I haven't put any wild inaccuracies in there. And then in terms of writing process, I write sort of all different times of the day. Kind of depends on when I'm feeling, inspired. I'm not a good 9 to 5 worker. I'm not good at, I know lots of writers who will sit down and treat it like a 9 to 5 job. And I feel inadequate sometimes with that, because I look at that and think, oh, they're so disciplined, and I would love to be able to do that. Because I feel like you'd achieve a lot doing that, but I've also kind of had to accept that it's not me, and that if I think if I forced myself to sit down at 9 a.m. on the dot, I probably would struggle, because it's better to write when I'm feeling inspired and feeling creative. And then when it comes to where I write, I prefer, where possible, to leave the house. So I like to go out to cafes and things and feel like I'm part of the world still, instead of, because writing is such a solitary thing. Yeah, so I like to go out somewhere, sit down at a cafe, and yeah, and just spend a couple of hours writing, then take a break, maybe go somewhere else, and then, depending on what stage of the book I'm up to, if it's going really well and I'm keen to write all the time, then I might, also be writing at night, on the couch, at the desk, wherever. Yeah, depending. Like I said, when I get further into a book, that's when it might start going really fast, and then I'm keen to write all day, every day.
Yeah. And do you start with your characters, or do you start with a plot or a setting? How?
Plot, definitely plot, as far as, and I don't plan it well, so it's not a well planned out plot, but more in terms of the main idea is what I start with. So for instance, with You Need to Know, like I said, I had this idea of, imagine if you came across a car accident and realized there were people from your family. So with this book, I literally sat and just started writing about, somebody in this car accident. And I went back in time, started, kind of going, okay, who's in this family? Writing. So I start with Mimi's point of view. Then I think I kind of got to the stage where I felt like, right, I'm not sure what else is happening with her next. I'm going to jump to somebody else. And then I went to Jill, the grandmother, and started writing her point of view. And again, each time I'd get to the end of a section and I'd think, not sure what's going to happen next, I'd jump to another character, and that kind of kept propelling me forward. And so in this book, because like I said, I go back in time to a month before the car accident to meet the family and build back up towards Christmas, then between every couple of chapters, I've got a little snippet forward again of the actual car accident, and I wrote it in that order as well, because it gave me something exciting to write every now and again. So between other chapters, I would kind of jump ahead and write a little bit more of the actual car accident, and so it was almost like something I got to look forward to. Okay, here's your reward for writing a couple of chapters. Now you get to write a bit more of the actual car accident, which was the exciting climactic scene of the book. So yeah, it pretty much wrote it in the order that it ended up being.
And do you ever base your characters on real life people?
Not completely, but I'll definitely borrow little little anecdotes from people, or maybe little tiny snippets of personality. Mimi and her husband Pete, for instance, there's bits of their relationship that are similar to my own relationship with my husband, but I also at the same time wouldn't say that Mimi and Pete are completely based on the two of us. It's more like borrowing from our life to add some authenticity to the characters. But yeah, I've never had a character that has been, completely based on somebody that I know or myself.
And do you allow your husband to read snippets before you publish your book?
Yes, well, more I try to ask him to read it, because I want his feedback along the way, but he's a slow reader, so he doesn't read fast enough for me.
Right.
He gets in trouble a lot, because I'll give him a version to read, and then I'll be, okay, hurry up and read it so I can ask you something about it. And then all of a sudden I'll be, all right, stop reading that version, because now I've got a second draft. So just forget that and start this draft. So poor Steve, he gets in trouble a lot for not being faster.
So are you currently working on anything at the moment that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I've started on my next book, but it is very, very early stages at the moment. I've really only I've got the main idea, and I've written, barely the first chapter. I'm still at procrastination stage at the moment and trying to get moving with it. But at this stage, it's about or it opens with a woman lying on a living room floor, thinking to herself that being dead is not going to be ideal, that she can't do anything about it, but what she is going to do is use her last few minutes or however long she does have left to figure out who murdered her. And this character is somebody who's a bit unlikable, so she's got a fairly decent list of suspects in mind, of people that she's probably rubbed the wrong way over the last couple of years. So that's sort of the main idea that I've got so far and that I've got started, and I've kind of got an idea of who these other characters are that will be within her world, but I haven't got much further beyond that yet.
And so when should the public expect it to come out?
That one will probably be early year after next, I think, at this stage, sort of depending also on how fast I work.
Yeah. Oh. Sorry, he just all disappeared on me.
Oh, really?
Yes. I got some.
I thought you looked concerned. I was thinking, I wasn't sure if you were just checking the chat, and I thought you look worried.
I was trying to figure out how to get us all back. I got some updates up on my computer, and you all disappeared. So where was I up to? We were chatting about your current book. So myself and my colleague have a book chat podcast where we recommend books to our patrons. So the next couple of books, the next couple of questions will be your recommendations. So what are you currently reading?
Currently reading The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. Love all of her books. She's absolute master of that domestic drama, suspense kind of genre, and I think she's very clever, so really enjoying that read at the moment.
Yes, I loved that. It was a twist that I was not expecting in that book. Yeah. And what are your 3 favorite books and why?
Oh, that's hard. There's so many favorite books. First one would be Stardust by Neil Gaiman. That's just, read it a very long time ago, but a book that I could reread over and over and have reread several times. And then on top of that, I also love the movie adaptation of it as well. So also a movie I could watch over and over. And I just love Neil Gaiman's style. I just find him so clever and interesting. Huge fan of everything that he writes. But yeah, Stardust in particular is just a big favorite. Next one, probably Marion Keyes. Anybody out there? Again, huge fan of Marion Keyes. Love everything she writes. Love her Irish sense of humor, and the way that she writes. But anybody out there in particular, I just remember reading, and there's a big shock about, I think it's about a third of the way through the book or halfway through the book, big twist and a big shock, and I just remember how much that book made me cry. But she writes these stories that do make you cry but also make you laugh and are also uplifting and so on. So I just love her. And sorry, my dog's barking out there, so I'm sorry if that's coming through in the background. As soon as somebody just either walks past the house, he decides to let us all know.
Yeah.
And nobody's allowed to be in the street.
Okay. Yeah, sounds like my dogs.
And so for third one, obviously aside from these 3, everything that my sisters write, Liane and Jackie, I love all of their books, but I can't choose just one because I love all of their books equally. So for the third one, maybe I'll just go with Harry Potter series because loved reading those when they first came out, and again, it's something that I can return to, and it's just this nice comforting feeling of being in that world. So yeah, I was a big Harry Potter fan way back and still am.
Yeah. And are you able to read other books while you write at the same time, or?
Yeah, I do find sometimes it can be a bit hard, like to take your mind out of the world of your own book that you're working on. And also if you're reading something else, you don't want their voice or their style to come into your own writing while you're trying to write. And the other thing is as well, is if I'm on deadline, I know that if I start reading a good book, I won't be able to put it down. So sometimes I do have to wait until I'm between drafts or something like that in order to be able to go, okay, now I can pick up some books and read them fast, so that while I've got the chance. But yeah, if I'm reading a book that I'm absolutely loving, there's no way I'm going to put it down. And if I've got work to do, that's not a good thing. So yeah.
Yeah. And the last question before we go to the audience: when you aren't writing, what do you do? What do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
So definitely reading, as mentioned. I love playing soccer. I play for an over 30s women's soccer team. Loved soccer for many years. So playing soccer and also watching soccer. Binge watching a good series on TV I enjoy as well. Taking the dog for a walk, that kind of thing. Going for a bush walk, especially with my youngest daughter, quite likes getting out in the bush. My eldest daughter is not such a fan. So yeah, all things like that.
Excellent. So we're going to hand over to the audience. So if you have any questions for Nicola, please write them in the chat box. Or if you would like, you can unmute your microphones and share your videos, as there is only a couple of us, so it shouldn't affect our audio. So I'll give everyone time to do that. And just a reminder that we are recording, so if you don't want to be recorded and placed on our social media platforms, you can just type into the chat box. Got one question. Janelle said, thank you, Nicola. It was great getting to know you. Can't wait to read the book.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Going to ask, but Amanda kindly asked them for me. Oh, sorry, Janelle.
You covered everything. You had well-rounded questions and it covered everything off. Thank you for being here, Janelle.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a lovely chat, and I hope that when you do read the book that you do enjoy it.
She's typing. I am sure I will, she says.
Lovely, thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Nicola. I hope one day we can get you in person at the Tamworth Library to host an event, and we can get our patrons to get some book signs, and
that would be great. Yes, I would love to.
Yeah,
come there and do that. And yeah, as we were saying earlier, it's so much it's great that throughout the past year or so we've been able to do these online events and everything, but it is nice to get back to face, and just makes a difference.
Yes, it does. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks, Nicola. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.